Today, for the very first time, I get to listen to the brand new The Heavy album. I am so excited, I cannot wait any longer. Let's get into it. This is Amen. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another album review / reaction here on my channel. I am so excited for this one. I have been waiting for this album since it was announced, since they released a single, I believe, quite a while ago. I'm pumped for this. The Heavy is a band that's so special, so important to me, and they really helped sort of like introduce me to a bit of like a new genre, but also they're like a super unique band. So I'll get into talking about them a little bit more in a little bit, but I just want to say thank you very much for watching. If this is your first time here and you haven't seen one of my videos before, know that what I'm going to basically do is talk about the band a little bit beforehand. Then I'm going to listen to the entire album from front to back for the very first time. I'll probably be doing some talking over the music, talking about what I'm hearing. Usually I talk about sort of like production things, how things were recorded, maybe some mastering, why the things sound the way they sound, and if it sounds good the way it was mixed and mastered and all that stuff. I don't generally talk about lyrics too much, though I might talk about them a little bit with this album. But I'll get to that in a little bit. But I'm going to talk about the album, probably talk over it a little bit, so just fair warning there. And then after I'm done listening to the entire album, I will give my sort of overall thoughts, and I sort of sometimes label that as my sort of review at the end. It's not really a review. I don't assign a score or anything like that, though I do tend to compare it to other albums I've heard this year and other albums in their discography, so there will be a little bit of that. But in the description of the video, I'll put timestamps for all those different sections I just mentioned, including all the individual songs from this album. So if you have a favorite song you'd like to hear my reaction to, feel free to skip to that song. Feel free to skip to the end if you just want to hear my overall thoughts. No big deal. I also want to say the Heavy's a pretty big band, although it's crazy because I haven't seen much promotion for this album at all. But I don't really do social media very much. The only thing I ever do is I'm on Facebook, and I usually use that primarily to discover new albums, and that's how I knew the Heavy was coming out with a new album, because I saw an advertisement for it quite a while ago. But I think I do follow them, so maybe that doesn't necessarily count as an advertisement. But anyway, I haven't seen very much for this album, but the Heavy is still a pretty big band, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to use their music from this album in this video. I always try in my videos to include the actual audio from the album, exactly what I'm listening to. I'm recording it at the same time on Streamlabs as I'm listening to it for the very first time, so you can hear exactly what I am hearing along with me when you're watching the video after I'm done editing it. However, if the Heavy doesn't allow, or the people who own the Heavy's music, though I think they probably own their own stuff, I'm not too sure. They're on a record label, but it might be their own record label. I haven't done that research, but hopefully I'll be able to use the audio from the album in this video, though. That's what I'm getting at. If I can't, I'll have to upload the video with no music in it, and it might be a little bit awkward. So if that is the case, I recommend you start your copy of the album along with me. I will put in the description of the video as well, link to listen along on with me on Spotify if you have to do that, to like sync up the video and stuff to either your own copy, or if you want to listen on Spotify or Apple Music or whatever software, whatever stuff you use to listen to music, that's totally cool, whatever. But hopefully, cross our fingers, we don't need to do that, and I'll be able to include the audio from the album in this video. But just wanted to shout that out there and say everything you need to know should be in the description of the video in terms of like links and things to find it if you have to sync everything up yourself. And on that note, I will also clearly have labeled on screen what I'm listening to as well. I'll put the title, the track number, and the title of the song up there as well. And if we do have to do any syncing, I'm going to be listening to this album on Spotify, because there is no, as far as I can tell, there is no CD version of this album. I just looked briefly this morning. But as far as I can tell, there's no CD version of this album. Otherwise, we would be listening to that. So we're going to just be using Spotify, and I might get some ads because I just have the free version of Spotify. So if I do that, I'll try to cut around everything. But again, I will always clearly have labeled on screen what I'm listening to. So if you need to sync up with me, it should be relatively easy to do that. All right. Before we get into talking about the Heavy, I just want to say last night I reacted to the brand new Ellie Goulding album for the very first time. I'm a little late with that one for whatever reason, doesn't matter. But that album came out at the beginning of April. And that was that album, the Ellie Goulding album, and this album, The Heavy, along with VNV Nation's album, which comes out I think next week or the week after. Those three albums have sort of been my most anticipated albums this year, since the beginning of the year, since I found out about each of those respective albums. And The Ellie Goulding album was fantastic. So I'm riding a bit of a high of these fantastic albums I've been listening to. Plus, last week we listened to Lux Eterna, not Lux Eterna, I keep calling it Lux Eterna, but the new Metallica album, 72 Seasons, which I do have my reaction for that up on my channel. If you haven't seen that yet, check that out. It's a fantastic discussion, not only about Metallica, but just about metal in general. We had a lot of fun, me and my two friends, both named Chris. We had a lot of fun talking about Metallica and metal in general, and having a good time listening to 72 Seasons. So check that out if you want. Also, but I think I'll probably post this video before my Ellie Goulding, because I want to try to get this video done relatively soon, because I want to get it out this weekend since the album just was released. But pretty soon on my channel, I should have my Ellie Goulding reaction uploaded as well. So if you're a fan of Ellie Goulding, I recommend that. I also have Depeche Mode recently, all sorts of cool things. Check out those things on my channel if you want to. And if you like the format of this video and you enjoy listening to me talk, because that's pretty much what all these videos are. So let's get into talking about the Heavy and their discography. I don't want to talk for too long because I want to get into the album, but I do want to go over these a little bit, and I want to show off a couple of cool things that I have too, so I always enjoy doing that when I can in music videos. But their first album, I have a copy of all of their albums here, I believe, but their first album, Great Vengeance and the Furious Fire, is their album that I probably know the least. I acquired it after I found out about them, which was around the time that they released The House That Dirt Built. I think that's what it's called. Yeah, The House That Dirt Built. I was working at a record store at the time. It wasn't just a record store, but we sold all sorts of things. It was called Hastings Entertainment, RIP. The entire franchise is closed down now. But I was working there at the time, and I don't think we had the CD and the CD player to play in the store. We couldn't have because there's some swear words on it. But I think I saw it come out, and we had it on the sort of new release shelf, and I was like, what is this? It looks interesting. It's very thin. It's not your stereotypical sort of digipack, I guess. There's like these like slim digipacks. It's a little bit smaller than the average one. Like this is probably closer to the average. Their album, The Glorious Dead. This is much more stereotypical size, and I don't know if you'll be able to see on here, but yeah, this is like significantly smaller. Hopefully you can tell that there, but it's just a weird size. And so I remember seeing that and thinking that's kind of a weird size, which I know it's silly to like even comment on that, but it was something that stuck out to me. And I enjoyed the artwork on the front. I thought it kind of looked interesting, but it wasn't necessarily my style. But I did look on the back, and I was like, I like the font. It looks cool. The songs look neat. So I remember going and looking them up online and just listening to a couple samples of things and thinking this sounds like something that I could really enjoy. And okay, sorry, our furnace just turned on. Had to go shut it off. I can't remember what I was talking about. Probably I was rambling. But anyway, I just wanted to say that I found this album, bought it, absolutely loved it. It's a really interesting, unique album in terms of the catalog of all the music that I own, which is quite a lot. And from there, I went back and then I discovered and purchased their first album here, Great Fire and Furious Vengeance. And I think these two albums together are really interesting. I feel like they do kind of connect a little bit. The production on this album, I feel like, is a little bit better. Neither album is super consistent with the production. Each song was sort of treated as its own individual thing, and it feels like they worked on each song individually to try to make it as good as they could. And it was sort of like separated from the rest of the album and how each of the different songs sound different, which is okay. I don't mind that much. I do enjoy when albums are mixed very consistently, and then it's the songwriting and what's included in the songs that allows the songs to have sort of like to vary from song to song. But when you have albums like this where the songs are so different, lots of acoustic instruments, lots of distorted acoustic elements, distorted vocals, clean vocals, all sorts of stuff like that. When I say distorted vocals and distorted elements, I don't mean like heavy distorted guitars or distorted screaming vocals. I mean intentionally distorted, usually with tape saturation or sort of tape distortion, or just sort of digital distortion using a plugin or something, some sort of amp emulator and things like that. These albums definitely sound very sort of bluesy in their approach, very old school bluesy in their approach. Sort of some of that lo-fi sort of blues music from the 50s and the 60s maybe. And that's sort of the production style they go for. It is sort of an intentional lo-fi sound, and I absolutely adore it. I love it. I think that they do it really, really well. Their first album is much less consistent in terms of the mix and the mastering, and just I feel like their second album flows a little bit better, but there are moments that are louder than other moments on the album, and that has to do with mastering and not necessarily mixing. But their first album, I don't know the songs off here too much. This is the album of theirs, like I said, that I've listened to the least, but I do enjoy it a lot. And there are some songs on here that I do like a lot. And it's just like that it feels almost like a hodgepodge of like a compilation album or something almost, rather than an individual album that was written and made to be a single piece. That's kind of how I feel about their first album. Their second album, of course, I absolutely love this album. Like I said, this is the one that helped me discover them. I think that they are, there's a lot of really important songs on here in terms of their music helping me sort of branch out into other genres. Until I had heard this album and then the True Blood soundtrack and True Blood Volume 1 soundtrack for the first, that came out with like sort of the first season of the TV show, the HBO show True Blood, and at the same time the Black Keys album Brothers. This album and those two albums really helped sort of like introduce me to sort of blues rock and a more sort of grittier, dirtier sounding production, much more of that, using that distorted sort of intentional lo-fi production to sort of emulate records from like the 50s and the 60s. And so up until that point, I hadn't really known that much about those sort of styles of music and having music sound sort of intentionally lo-fi. And I say that in a very good way, by the way, because I do still think that these albums are mixed very well, especially this album, more so than their first one. But I think that their albums are mixed for the most part very well. And what they're doing is being done basically flawlessly. I think of all the music that I listen to or that I've heard that has that sort of gritty, dirty blues rock sound to it, I think that the Heavy's albums are my favorite sounding of the albums in that sort of genre. But on this album in particular, obviously How You Like Me Now was their huge, huge, huge song that exploded them into popularity, got them on the David Letterman late night show. And I know David Letterman at one point said they were his favorite band. I think at one point they were the only band that he had ever allowed them to do like an encore on his show. He liked them so much, he was like, do another song. So that's really cool. And I know that's one of the things that helped kind of catapult them into the stratosphere of popularity. But my favorite song on this album by far is Short Change Hero. I think that song is absolutely incredible. It's one of my favorite songs of all time. It's probably in my top 20 favorite songs of all time, which is something I've been thinking about a lot about the last year or so. But I love that. I love 16. The drums are just absolutely incredible, and the piano is so great. I do think that there's some interesting choices on here mix-wise. Like the song No Time is interesting. It's almost like they went a little too far with the lo-fi sound, and the song never gets big like I feel like it wants to, but it was an interesting thing. It was like a bit of a it was a choice that they made to have the song sound that way, I think, and they did it intentionally, and it was a pretty brave choice in my opinion. It took some courage to do that, rather than having the song feel kind of like a bigger rock song almost. So I don't know, I guess I applaud their ability to want to try something like that, but I don't think that it was necessarily executed in the way that I would have preferred it to be done. But I really like this album a lot. I like on their first two albums as well, the sort of ballad that's towards the end. I like all of the Heavy's like slower ballad songs. I think those are some of my favorite songs of theirs. And that actually leads us to The Glorious Dead, with one of my favorite songs of theirs, The Lonesome Road. I think that song's absolutely incredible. And I think that song is probably the best mixed song on this album, because I don't care for the way this album was mixed. The kick drum is very round and doesn't have much definition to it, and it's very dry, and it doesn't necessarily sound like it fits with the style of what they're going for. And because the kick drum sounds the way that it does, I think that sort of dictated the way that they mixed the rest of the album. The guitars are very muted on this album. You can barely tell what they're doing at all. And the bass, this album sounds very muddy, very woofy throughout the entire thing. And the vocals are a little bit lower than they should be, in my opinion. So I think this is actually their weakest mixed album. I think they have a lot of fantastic songs on here. They repurposed an older song called Big Bad Wolf, which I think was on their first EP or something from years earlier. But I enjoy this album for what it is. I like the sort of horror aesthetic, which they did have a little bit on the house that Dirt built. But they leaned into it a little heavier with this. I love the samples, the sort of like horror movie samples and stuff like that. I like the moments that feel heavier on here, but because it's mixed the way it's mixed, it never actually feels heavy. You can tell that's kind of what they were going for with their song arrangements, but the mix absolutely like drained and sucked all of the heaviness or the intensity out of it. And so that's why this album is probably their most disappointing album in their catalog to me. And before I move on, I just want to say with these two albums, I have something really cool that I can show you guys. First of all, I'll show you this. This is my copy that I got at that record store when I was working there of The Glorious Dead. Now, in my videos on my channel the last few days, including the Ellie Goulding one that I recorded last night and the Metallica 72 Seasons one, plus a few others, I had this record on the wall behind me because I was getting excited for the release of the new Heavy album, and so I put this one on the wall. But I've always enjoyed the Heavy's artwork a lot. The collage sort of style of stuff here. Hold on, I gotta check this and make sure there's no nudity in here, because they do. Oh, there is a bit of nudity. Patrick, editing this post, make sure you blur that out like a dummy. I didn't think of that. Let's see if there's anything to show on here. It looks like it's just text on there. The record itself is just 180 gram vinyl. Oh, there's a download code on there. I don't want to show that. Actually, I don't even care. I don't know if this is good anymore. I don't know if this is good or not, but there you go. If someone wants to take that code and put it in and get a free download of this album, feel free. Be my guest. But anyway, the vinyl itself, 180 grams, so it's nice thick. I like the artwork here, or the color scheme at least, the sort of turquoise. I don't know if you can tell that's turquoise, and then orange over here. Very simple. They definitely have a very throwback sort of aesthetic for their artwork, and I really enjoy that because the music itself is very throwback. So it makes sense to me that it would be mixed that way. This one, a little cooler. I'm not going to take the disc out because it basically looks the exact same, I think. So that's The Glorious Dead on vinyl. Proud that I own that. But the one that I'm significantly more proud of owning is this. The House That Dirt Built on vinyl. Have not put this one on my wall yet. Oh, on the vinyl itself, I think this one is 180 gram as well. Maybe not. They fit it all. They fit the whole record on one, the whole album on one record. So it might not be 180. I'm not exactly sure, but very proud of having this. It doesn't do any good to have it back there. Anyway, I'm showcasing them here, so that gets their like moment in the spotlight, I guess. But there you go, my two Heavy vinyl albums. Really like those. So now we're getting to what is my favorite album in their discography so far. The Hurt and the Merciless. I absolutely adore this album, which is shocking to me because there's a lot of brass on here, and I don't tend to enjoy brass-infused music as much, but this is the perfect example of utilizing brass to its fullest extent, in my opinion. I absolutely adore this. I love the artwork. I love every song on here. I think it's a fantastic, phenomenal album. I think... Oh, that's right. This one comes with a big poster. I was going to have this somewhere in the background, but it's hard for me to attach posters. I don't want to, like, tape stuff. Man, that's so cool, though, isn't it? That is awesome. And then I don't know if you can tell, but the lyrics are all on here. There you go. So that's very cool. I should have taped this over here. Something like this. That's all right, though. You guys have seen it. That's the poster. This is kind of cool. It comes in a little side. It's like a record, basically. Pull it out. There's the disc. On this album, I love the whole thing, like I said, but I think Miss California is actually like a super, super special song that might be their best song. Like I said, I love Short Change Hero. It's between Short Change Hero and Miss California that I absolutely... It's hard for me to tell, but I also really, really love A Ghost You Can't Forget. I love Mean Old Man. I love gosh, just what happened to the love. Since You've Been Gone is great with that Tom feel. Since You've Been Gone, dum ticka doom doom ticka doom doom ticka doom doom. Since You've Been Gone, dum ticka doom doom. It's like the only song, one of the only songs I've heard that the tom drums and the drum fill, like a drum fill, is like one of the most important parts of a song, and that's so cool. I bet their drummer has a lot of fun when he performs that song live. But really enjoy this album. Everything about it is great. Then we come to their second most recent album, other than the album we have today, Sons. And when I first heard this album, I remember being a little bit more disappointed with it than I listened to it. I listened to this just the other day, and I was like, oh, this isn't as bad as I remember it being. I remember it sounding a little bit harsh, and I remember it sounding very chaotic and not enjoying the arrangements of the songs as much. The thing is, I think this is their most heavy album, which is probably ironic because I think they got a little bit of slack for not being very heavy on these two albums. Because this album definitely is not very heavy, and this album is not mixed heavy, even though I think the songs were calling for it to be a little heavier in terms of the mix. So on this album, they definitely went heavier, and their song Heavy For You, the first song on here, is this heavy for you? Am I ready for you? Is this heavy enough for you? Basically is what they're asking. And I think that that's really cool. I really like that song. I actually like pretty much everything off of this album as well. Again, I don't think that they've ever necessarily released a bad song. There's just certain ones that I like more than others on this album in particular. But I think the first like 5-6 songs are all total fire. So that's that. And so that leads us to the new album, which I will pull up here. As I said, we're going to be listening to it on Spotify, just the free version. So I will edit around commercials and everything, or not commercials. I will edit around ads and everything. Let me just get to this real quick. I had it shut off because I don't want my computer to be using any more CPU than it needed to while I was recording the intro of the video. Okay, so I brought it up. Amen. 10 songs, 34 minutes, 50 seconds, which seems pretty short, but honestly, their albums are not very long. I think that Hurt and the Merciless is their longest album. I think. I could look that up, but I don't want to waste time messing around with that. But the first two albums for sure are pretty short. Sons is pretty short. So 34 minutes, it's right above that as sort of acceptable limit for being called a full album, but it is 10 songs. And as I look at the lengths of the songs here, which I did right before I started recording, we have like 3.5, 3.5, 3:48, 3 minutes, 3:40, 2:56, 2:54, 3:49, and 4:30. Those are all pretty decent song lengths. The Ellie Goulding album I listened to last night had 16 songs on it, and most of the songs were right about 3 minutes and 15 seconds long, and they were all structured very similarly, and they all ended very abruptly with just a sort of like a dry vocal, like the chorus was going, the third and final chorus of the song was going, and then sort of elements were taken out, and then almost every single song, I think 9 out of the 16, ended with the vocals becoming very dry at the end, and then it just sort of this kind of like little sort of feeling. So I wonder if we'll get anything like that on here. But in terms of this album, I think that I really don't know what to expect. I have not heard a single second of any of this. I know they've released some singles, they've done some videos and things. I have not heard not an ounce of any of these songs have I heard. So I don't know what to expect. It could sound terrible. For all I know, they decided to be even more sort of like punky than they have been in the past and make a terrible sounding album. I doubt it. If I had to guess what it's going to sound like, I would guess it might be sort of a combo between Sons and The House That Dirt Built, maybe, would be what I would guess. We'll end up seeing. There's no sort of really long songs. The last track was the longest one, I think. So I assume that will be the sort of the slow ballad. I did see on here, they have the track 3 on the album is called Bad Mother Effa, which I'm not like a big... On my channel here, I do not ever have swear words on my channel, at least the really, really bad ones. If I was like, damn, I could say that. But I'll probably edit that out. I do think that song, I just saw, I think this morning when I was looking, that they released a video for that one. So that might be what they consider to be kind of a single-ish type of thing. So rather than just skip that song, because it's probably going to have the most swear words on it. Actually, it looks like that's the only song that has explicit listed on the album. So that's interesting. But anyway, what I was going to say was I don't generally enjoy when bands swear too much in their music. It's not something that ever really ruins anything for me unless it's like super egregious or done in a really like sophomoric, high school humor way. And sometimes that can be funny with the case of like Psycho Stick or something like that. But if it's done really sophomoric, like it really takes my enjoyment of the album and lessens it. But throughout their whole catalog, they have used swear words on all of their albums. They don't shy away from it ever, so it's not out of norm for them to do this. I feel like it's not even out of the norm for them to have a song like that, called that, titled that at least. And so I'm not going to hold that against them or anything at all. We'll see if there is a ton of swear words like in the chorus of that song or something, and it's really super hard for me to edit it out. I might have to do kind of crappy editing, but I'll try to use my audio skills to the best of my ability to make my own clean version of that song, I guess, to have in the video. So you don't have to worry about that if you're someone that cares about those types of things, though I know most people don't. But I'm curious to see if based on their catalog, I'm curious what the guitar is going to do on this album. I feel like if they wanted to try to go back to their roots a little bit more and have a bit more of like a live show feeling, I'm sure with their live show, the guitars are a lot more important. But on some of their albums, the guitar is basically non-existent. Like I said, on the way the Glorious Dead is mixed, you really can't tell what the guitars are doing at all. You can hear them, but they're certainly not like the featured instrument. The featured instrument is the bass, the vocals, and the kick pretty much, and the snare to some extent. But I'm curious to see if this album feels a little bit more rock-oriented. On their last two albums, both Hurt and the Merciless and Sons, they had sort of a brass section with them as well on Sons as well as on Hurt and the Merciless. So I'm curious to see if they continue with that, if the songs have that sort of like bluesy Motown kind of feel that some of their songs have, that gritty bluesy feel to it as well. I'm sure the production will be what I would assume it's going to be. I mean, I like I said, I've been trying to think of my top 20 favorite songs or so of the last year, going through things, trying to make a list of that. And there are several Heavy songs that I consider to be like better than so many other bands' best songs. And some of those songs aren't even my favorite Heavy songs. I just absolutely adore the way that they put their music together, the way it has a throwback feel while still feeling modern, while still feeling like the dirty, gritty production that I enjoy. It's just that their entire package is something that I really, really, really enjoy, minus a few little things here and there that don't necessarily stick with me. And so we'll see what happens. But without further ado, let's get into this and just see what we think. So this is track 1, Hurricane Comin'. Again, we're going to be listening on Spotify, so when we get to an ad, I'll edit around it, and hopefully I'm able to use the audio. If not, you'll have to sync up with me. So I'm going to hit play right now. We'll see there's going to be a delay, so I'm not going to bother doing a countdown, but you'll see on the screen when everything pops up is when the song is going to be starting. So this is The Heavy with their album Amen, track 1, Hurricane Comin'. Okay, very lo-fi sounding. Wow. There's like a low-pass filter set way higher than it probably should. We'll see how the vocals sound. Love the guitars. I'll turn it up a little. I feel like it's way too low passed, the entire mix. It sounds terrible. There's a low-pass filter that is put on it, like the master was done poorly. It just doesn't sound good. There's not enough high frequencies to make it sound good. It sounds like the Black Keys' last album, Dropout Boogie, which is probably one of the most disappointing albums I've ever heard in my life, because it was done so bad. This also reminds me of the Constellation's second album, which is mixed just like this too. Like they went through and made a whole really cool song, really cool album, And then in the mastering, the guy just took the low pass filter and was like, no, we don't need any frequencies over 2,000 hertz, which there's a little bit more in here than 2,000, but hopefully you understand what I'm talking about. It sounds like a bad MP3 or something, which I am listening on the free version of Spotify, but I know enough about MP3s and compression and things to know that that's not what I'm hearing. I'm hearing bad mastering. It sounds like they made this album. Again, I'm only basing this off the first song, so maybe the rest of the album is different. And I know I'm not paying attention to the song at all, but I can't get over the fact that it sounds so terrible. It sounds like what they did was they made this album, then they put it onto tape, and then they pulled the tape off. They pulled so they say they made this album, right, in Pro Tools or whatever they were using. Then they recorded it all onto tape, and then they took and recorded the tape back into Pro Tools, and then had to do denoising software over the entire thing, and basically get rid of every frequency above a certain frequency. I don't have any frequency analyzing software, but if I had that, I bet it would be ridiculous to look at this. Very disappointed with that. Okay, track 2, Ain't a Love. Love the Western sound and theme of this. I forgot to mention that on some of their albums they have like Western themed songs like Old West. I absolutely adore those songs. Those are some of my favorite songs that they have. That's one of the reasons I like Short Change Hero so much. I heard it through the grapevine. You were coming to town. Okay, this song sounds way better than the first one. Maybe it's just because of those elements. The trumpet, the brass section, and the heavy guitar was so low passed. Because again, I talked quite a lot at the beginning before we got to listening to the album about the intentional lo-fi, making your music intentionally sound lo-fi. But like those strings, everything sounds very muted. You know what I mean? Okay, I'm gonna try this. I've done this in some of my previous videos. I'm gonna EQ the high frequencies to add some in there. We'll see if there's any to add. I'm gonna do it right now. Now that'll be something I do in editing to see. I'm not able to hear what you're hearing right now. Probably sounding a little better though. Okay, let's cut that off and go back to the way the album was originally right now. Now, again, I'm not listening to that. That'll be something I do post, but it probably sounded like a lot of it, like the song went sucked in and became muted. But this is the way that they wanted this album to sound. With those strings especially are very disappointing. Okay, let's switch again right now. Awesome guitar solo. Love the background vocals. They do background vocals so well. I talk about background vocals on my channel a lot in terms of, I think background vocals are one of the most underappreciated aspects in all of music, any genre. Okay, we'll turn the EQ thing off for now, and I'm not going to talk about that aspect of this anymore because I don't want to ruin the whole thing for anybody. Okay, so this is track 3. Very aggressive drums. Love this background. Constant vocal distortion on his vocals. Pretty standard though, I would say, for them. Maybe a little bit more overdone, a little more fried, but it sounds terrible. Sounds awful. Alright, this sounds awful. We're going to skip to the next song. It's track 4. I Feel the Love. I ain't feeling the love for this album at all. That high pass filter is going to ruin this entire album for me. Oh, I hate it when this happens. Man, there's just some times where when the songs get big for choruses and stuff, it just sounds awful. Very cool there. Nice delay on the guitar. Spread wide. It just sounds terrible. Let's try to add some more frequency with that EQ. I'll keep the settings the exact same as I had starting right now. Again, I don't know. It doesn't sound like there's any high frequencies in there whatsoever at all to add back in, but love the song. Background vocals sound great. If you could hear them, it sounds like they're underwater. The whole album sounds like it's underwater. Like that. I really like when you hear the people in the studio. Really like when you hear the people in the studio. That's cool. There you can hear some tape hiss in there. They didn't have to get rid of, I guess. Terrible. Love the drum beat. know, this sounds okay. But it's when everything comes in that it starts to feel like bleh. God, people are going to hate this reaction so much. Because it is bad. I can't get over it. The thing that makes it the worst is, like, I feel like I would really absolutely be loving all of these songs, but I can't get over the fact that they made the decision to have it sound like garbage. It sounds terrible. Again, this part sounds fine. This sounds okay. But when they start adding those background things and the song gets intense, it sounds like you're listening to an old 45 or something on which I'm sure is probably what they were going for, but you can push the intentional lo-fi too much. It just sounds awful. Oh. The Black Keys have done this to me. The worst thing is when an album, there's something wrong with the mixing or the mastering, and that's what ruins an album. Because these songs sound like the arrangements sound great. It sounds like they were probably recorded good too, I would guess. Unless they recorded everything through some sort of a tape machine or tape emulator. But even that can sound great. It just sounds like they got rid of all the high frequencies at a certain point, and it's just gone. Oh, I think I forgot to turn that EQ thing off earlier when I was saying. Let's turn it on again right here. Now, if what I want to happen is working correctly, you should hear it sound better now. Let's turn it off right now. Did you feel like something's missing now? It's like you're listening to really good speakers, but the tweeters stopped working. I really don't know if I should even finish this. Okay, well, the good thing is we're halfway done already, so I only have to suffer through the second half of this. Track 6, Stone Cold Killer. See there, that guitar has more high frequencies in it. This sounds better. His vocals have more high frequencies in them too. So does the snare. This sounds completely different sonically from the frequency range wise. There are more high frequencies in this song. Yes, this sounds a million times better. What the hell were they doing? This song had to have been made at a different time. Sounds way better. There's more breathiness, there's more airiness in the background vocals. Incredible. Well, thank goodness there's at least one song on here. Okay. Guitars sound great. Much more of like a rock song feeling. Almost like a bit of a 90s feel, a little grungy. That ding, 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 ding. Sounds like a cowbell. Could be something similar to that. Backing vocals sound great. I think the cowbell thing is a little bit outrageous. But that's kind of the hook of this, I guess. Not the hook, the spice here. That guitar sounds great. It's just those extra frequencies that are in this song that have not appeared on this album so far make this the best song on the album so far. The rest of the album's good. We'll at least get a half album. I mean, this just sounds a million times better. Hopefully you can understand what I'm saying. Reverb is really nice. Kick is massive, sounds great. The claps with the snare is great too. Man, that is so disappointing that the first 5 songs were not mixed like this. That is just kills me. That is so amateur, so unprofessional. And I know I just talked about the production on their other albums. Wow. Almost a little ZZ Top-ish, kind of. Wow, awesome. Wow, that is... Now I'm almost even more mad. There was a little tambourine high frequencies there. Yep, way better. Love the kick. It's very roomy. Guitar sounds fantastic as well. Awful garbage. Terrible. That's so weird. It is weird. I feel like this isn't necessarily as bad. Those strings sounded a little bit better, but the background vocals were just... The frequencies were smushed out of those. So that means that it was a conscious thing. Unless this song was done at the same time as track 6. Yeah, the background vocals. I guess this song isn't as bad. That organ has high frequencies in it, so they're choosing to take the high frequencies out of things, it sounds like. Yeah, that hi-hat. The hi-hat. Maybe that's what it is, it's the crash cymbals. The crash cymbals, the overheads have nothing. Like the toms there. Love the groove here, by the way. Can't really tell what the bass is doing, but there's so much low frequencies in that kick. But I think the bass was kind of just mirroring the kick. All right, we'll see what... Now I have no idea what to expect. Maybe it's just the crash cymbals that have been bothering me, but a little distortion on the bass there. Or a little amp distortion, maybe.
I believe you were sent from above, sent from the gods, sent with love. And with a heart of gold, heart never blow cool. I got a thing on my mind. You want it your way all the time. You're trying to twist till we bust, playing with us like I'm a sucker for love. That's asking for a whole lot of me. That's asking for a whole lot of me. That's asking for a whole lot of me. You're asking for a whole lot of me. And with my hand on heart, my head's in fits if the drama starts. I got a beef with blame and all the ill business blowing up your name. Now we can see if it works.
Yeah, I just don't know what to feel. I know how I'm feeling. I'm feeling very frustrated. I'm feeling very disappointed. I'm feeling like someone made a stupid decision somewhere to think that this sounds good. Something is wrong here. And I thought it was just there's high frequencies in that tambourine. So that means it's not the mastering.
That's asking for a whole lot of me.
The strings definitely sound like they're low passed a lot, but I don't know if that's... Tambourine sounds fine. Track 9 feels like rain. Yeah, I can hear a shaker in there that has high frequencies in it. What?
Need some healing from all this pain. Got all the feelings, not all the planes. I may be hopeful.
I mean, this sounds okay.
Maybe the reason
Even that hi-hat sounds all right, I guess. It's not the best, but...
Gotta move on, be tougher than strong. Gotta roll deep if you wanna be someone. Always thankful, ain't always right.
I mean, I would say his vocals definitely sound like they're correct. Man, this is disappointing because I really like every song that I've heard. I've loved, but the mix. Why would you limit the stereos? Why would you limit the frequency range so much? Again, I understand the idea of making something sound lo-fi, but there's no excuse with all the technology we have for as much money as I'm sure this band had to make this album. It is the same thing as the Black Keys did with Dropout Boogie. That album is unlistenable. There is no high frequencies. What kind of gear are people listening to that they think that this sounds comparable to other modern music? Ballad. That guitar sounds good. Right away you can tell the strings have more high frequencies. So does the snare. Voice sounds fantastic. This sounds like it was mixed like Stone Cold Killer. Hi-hat sounds nice. Nice loose shaker. Bigger sort of grains, almost like a gourd or something, gourd shaker or some kind. What are we gonna do? Background vocals sound good. Are we gonna get some big crash cymbals or anything? I mean, there are crash cymbals in there. It sounds better, but. Tambourine sounds good.
I wouldn't
Okay, so we just got done listening to the brand new The Heavy album, Amen, and that was straight fire trash garbage. It was absolute. The mix, the master, something was so screwed up there that it's unlistenable almost to me. I had flashbacks to the Dropout Boogie album from the Black Keys. I don't know what gear people are using to listen to music on that sounds acceptable. And the fact that there was one song, Stone Cold Killer, that sounded like it clearly had more frequencies and it was clearly mixed differently than the rest of the album tells me that it wasn't the mastering that did this. It was, at least I think, it was the mixing engineer's decisions to do this. It sounds like the entire album was recorded onto tape, and then they took and they recorded, they pulled from the tape and recorded everything digitally, and then basically got rid of all the high frequencies using like tape denoising software or something. It sounds like that, which I understand, like tape emulation and having the retro sound of how old things sound on tape and stuff. I understand the appeal of some of those things. But the thing is, we are in the year 2023, and you do not need to go this far with making your album sound lo-fi. You don't need to. Unless there was some sort of a problem that they had when they were recording, and some of the elements, for example, the overhead microphones, the crashing is like egregiously awful. Like in the choruses of the song, when the songs get big, they don't feel like they get big. It feels like it gets muffled, and it's just absolutely atrociously unacceptable levels of bad. Terrible. Okay, I'm going to insert this somewhere into this video, and Chris, I'm here with my friend Chris, who doesn't know at all what we're doing. I want to get his unbiased opinion of this whole video that you guys have just been watching. Okay, you know how I feel about this because you've been watching this video so far, right? Chris doesn't really know anything other than he can probably tell from my tone how I feel about this.
That's all I can tell.
What we're going to do right now is he is going to listen to a sample of a really well-produced, phenomenal sounding song. Then I'm going to play him a song from this album. And
I am so excited.
We'll see what he's going to think, okay? So, Chris, I'm going to send you just a link to a song on Spotify. Mm-hmm. And we're going to be using Spotify because that is how I listened to this album that this video is for. So we're using the same medium so that no one can say, "Oh, you idiot, you listened to it on Spotify and that's why the frequencies aren't right."
No one's going to say that because everybody uses Spotify.
Well, I'm for sure. Okay, so I sent you a link.
I am at it.
Gorillaz, The Tired Influencer, right?
Okay, all right.
Let's listen to, like, I'm going to say half this song about.
Okay.
So, you ready to start it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, 3, 2, 1.
Sounds very nice.
It's a cracked screen world where white blooms above the city. Catch sunrise and the freeway glows, perfumed with Palo Santo. Early flights touch down every day. Petite influencer, you're sleeping deep, waiting for an answer. Gotta pray.
That's enough. You can stop it.
Crisp.
Okay, so you...
Crisp.
Now, I will say, one of the other reasons I use that is because I do not necessarily think that that's a perfect mix. My biggest critique of that album is the way that his vocals sit on top of everything. He has this very specific way that he mixed his vocals on the entire album, and to me, they sound just a little bit too much separated from the way the rest of the music sounds. They're a little bit boxy, and they definitely slice through. But that's not the point where we're talking about here. Now I'm going to send you a link to the first song on this album that we're talking about
for this.
in this video.
Yeah. I do. I live for this. I love to just get, I don't know. Everybody loves listening to, doing trash stuff, but it's getting really exciting.
Yeah. Okay, so there's the link.
Yep. Here it is.
Now,
that's too bad.
I was going to say, you
That's
can
too bad.
probably feel my disappointment already because you know how special this band is to me. Okay, so take a breath. Think about everything we just heard, right? Those frequencies that are above like 2,000 hertz, okay?
That's a lot of frequencies.
Imagine that there's... Okay, now listen to track 1. Ready? Ready? 3, 2, 1.
Why does this keep happening to you?
Let's get through the chorus once, then we'll stop it. Okay, that's enough.
I feel like that's what it's like if you're 75. Like everything sounds like that.
Or if you listen to music while you're underwater. Right, but like that's wrong, right?
Why is that? Like there's a ride bell like in there.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Let's listen to I want to just prove let's listen to track 2, just a little bit of that, okay? So this is cuz it's bad across the whole thing except for one song, Chris. One song
That's
on
even
this
worse.
album.
Because then it's like, oh, this wasn't a manufacturing.
It didn't have to be this way. Yes, I agree. So let's listen to a little bit of track 2. This is Ain't a Love. Okay, ready? 3, 2, 1. Awesome, right? Sounds like an Old West song.
This is nice. This is great. The guitar strings, bling, bling, would be gone in that first song. All of them, just nothing.
Three little birds told me you're still and settled down. Breaking hearts like China plays, still messing around. I remember that first kiss through the sonic shop down. Oh, how I loved you, but ain't love that I want. Oh, how I loved you, but ain't love that I want. I'd walk through fire.
Okay, did you stop it? You can stop it now.
That's a great song.
Yes. Okay, so that one to me didn't sound as bad. But the strings still did sound a little bit like they were underwater and stuff in the chorus. Now I want you to listen to. Do you want to listen to a sample of the song that I think sounds good, or do one more that sounds pretty bad? I think.
Was that not the one song that sounds good?
No, that one doesn't
Okay.
sound. That's not as good. That song is written a little bit differently, so that there's less like it's less dynamic. It's pretty much the same dynamics the whole time. In listening to back to that now, that didn't sound as egregious to me as it did having listened to the first track all the way through, and then that track following right next, and then the third track, which actually skipped the third track. So let's listen to Feels Like Rain, because there's a lot of really awesome strings on that, and I definitely feel like that one is a good example of another good example of a bad one.
Okay.
Okay? So, ready? 3, 2, 1.
There's like a chunk. The EQ has just got a big, flat, empty space.
Isn't that so cool, though?
Need some healing.
Are these mixes left heavy?
All this pain. Got all the feeling.
I think there's some vocals over there, or some guitar over there,
Okay.
but that doesn't bother me that much.
Sure.
Not as much as when the chorus kicks in. I want you to listen to the crash cymbals. Okay?
Stars align, 'cause I was born. I was caught in your game. But this love tide of now feel like rain. This love tide of now feel like rain.
That's good. That's enough.
It's not as bad as the Diablo album.
Oh, okay, you're not getting that feeling from it. See, to me, it feels like they wanted to emulate like the sound of an old record playing out of like an old cabinet style record player,
Yeah.
which is stupid. Like, I understand the idea of making your music lo-fi. That's probably what I spent an hour already in this video talking about. Like, I understand the idea of wanting to make your music sound intentionally lo-fi.
What's that album from last year that was like pristinely Elvis in terms of like its old style, the way that they presented it, 50s, 70s Western kind of.
Oh, 2 years ago. You mean the Lord Huron album?
Yes.
Yeah, the old cowboy songs. Yeah.
That's the one, yep.
That's a perfect example of how this should have sounded. Now, the difference there, though, is that this is all about like sort of like aggressiveness and distortion. And like all their other albums are mixed flawlessly. Like, they sound fantastic, and it's the same kind of thing. So it's not flawlessly, but like their other albums are the frequency range at least is mixed the way it should be. But here, when you have background vocals and strings and everything coming in and the crash cymbals, and it just sounds like it's underwater, it is so terrible. Okay, so
Those
now
crash cymbals especially came in, they were just like kind of like.
Oh,
like
man, it's
you
awful.
could feel it felt like pieces of it were missing.
I think that this album sounds like they recorded it all onto tape. Then they took and digitized it from the tape, and then had to do denoise to the entire thing to get rid of the tape hiss.
That's a very good way to think of it.
That's what this sounds like.
When you overly denoise something and it starts
Yes.
pulling frequencies out of what you want.
Yes, and that's what this sounds like, and that should be, in my opinion, unacceptable for how phenomenal every one of these songs is. Incredible. And it's just, I'm never going to be able to listen to this again. So now, as an example of how it could sound good, in my opinion, let's listen to Stone Cold Killer, track 6.
Sure.
This is probably, I would assume this was recorded at a different time in a different studio and mixed maybe even by a different guy. But hopefully you can notice a difference right away. Okay, 3, 2, 1.
There's so much space. It feels
There's high
like
frequencies.
You can breathe.
There's high frequencies.
My hands like a flame to the sound of the voice in you. You got the hooks, got the balls, got me begging you to light the fuse. Hey, I got my mind on my honey.
See, the background vocals have high frequencies to them.
Feel good, but it feels like I'm caught in the lights at the scene of a crime, but like a stone cold killer. You're cold as ice.
Okay, you can stop it.
Do you have any graphic EQs?
I don't have anything that shows like the frequency spectrum, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah. I'll throw some of these. I could put some of these through one and just have a look at the difference.
That's what I wanted, some sort of a frequency analyzer. I think that song, the background vocals sounded not. Now again, that song didn't sound sizzly. It didn't sound overly high, but it sounded correct. And
it did. It felt It felt like space. Like the ceiling wasn't right above you.
Yeah, and the reason for that is because there's high frequencies. What do the high frequencies do? They add definition to every sound. They help differentiate from sound to sound, and also they help you place things stereo mix. That's why when things sound muddy, they sound woofy, and they sound muddy usually in the middle of a mix rather than on the sides. And so that you could hear some higher frequencies definitely in the snare. His voice, I think, is pretty good throughout the whole album. Like, I do think that his vocal track is acceptable throughout the whole album.
I think that his voice in general seems to fit under the ceiling where it's all been cut off. Like, he still fits in that range just in a natural voice.
Yeah, I think that his vocals work, but the background vocals, the strings, like when the choruses come in on these songs, it's like unlistenable. And the thing is, my first thought when I first heard it was, wow, this is over compression. But I don't think that's what's happening. Definitely there's a lot of compression on this album that's causing everything to feel the way that it is kind of feeling. But it's the lack of high frequencies that just destroy the mix and ruin the entire album for me. And in my opinion, this album is objectively bad sounding and it is ruined by the mix. The fact that song, track 6, isn't mixed that way and those frequencies are there tells me that it wasn't the mastering.
Yeah.
Right? Because if it was the mastering, it would be consistent across the album. Now, the mastering...
So it's intentional.
The mastering engineer maybe got these songs and there was no high frequencies in there and he's like, oh my God, what do I do? You know? Or he's the one that got the sound, these songs with all the tape hiss and stuff in them. So he's like, I got to take all this hiss out. So he did it as best he could and we're left with what's left. You know, it just... And you know, Chris, this could have been my #1 album of the year.
Yep.
Even with the little bits of songs you heard there, you would have heard that immediately and been like, this is Patrick's favorite song of the year. This is Patrick's favorite song of the year. This is an Old West song with cool hip-hop drum beat over the top of it, distorted all to hell, but sounding really good, except for the lack of high frequencies. This would have been Patrick's favorite thing in the world. And that's the whole album. It is unacceptable.
I want to know why this keeps happening. This is the third album now that's been that I know of from your complaining that has been this egregiously under.
That's my question now. It's like, what are these people listening to this album on that they think that this is acceptable when it leaves the studio to go out? To answer your question from earlier, why is this happening? Like, the Black Keys, arguably one of the biggest bands on the planet. One of the most respected, biggest, best-selling, like most renowned, plays the biggest shows, biggest people on the planet. Why did they release an album that, in my opinion, objectively is missing frequencies that make it sound professionally produced? Right? How is that happening? And the only thing I can think of is that these people are so obsessed with retro vintage gear that they're listening on speakers that don't have the capability of playing high frequencies.
I don't know why they would do that.
I agree, especially for people like this. And I know for a fact that Dan Auerbach can produce like some of the best sounding music on the planet in his studio. So like, because he's done it. He did it right there with what we were just listening to. So I don't understand it, but that's the only thing I can come up with.
The only option that I can imagine is like, there's some sort of data that they've gathered about the way that most people listen to music. And it's probably, AirPods or something, anything with incredibly tiny speakers.
That has,
AirPods. And so it's like your high frequencies are going to just be in there. And especially if you're an old, I don't know how true this particular statistic that I'm about to say is, but like, generally speaking, your core audience, your core demographic for music is like 12 to 20 in terms of age. And these are people, they haven't lost any of their highs yet. You get older and you start to lose your highs. And I feel like maybe it's this combination of tiny, crappy speakers inside tiny, crappy ears that the really high highs stick into people's shit so much where it's just like, because like I have like some of the mixing I've had to do recently for the game. One of the QA testers brought up like, hey, this thing here is just destroying me. Like it's so bright and harsh.
Too shrill.
And I went in and I went in and I pulled out everything at least like 15 and up gone down to maybe like 12 to 13 because nothing that I'm doing is benefited from stuff way up there.
Right.
If I can't even hear it, what's the point?
Right.
And so it's and so it makes me wonder like, but see, we're still talking about, I don't know, what do you think, like 8 to 12 that seems to be missing from these albums.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's nothing harsh about that, something up there like that. And I'm not sure. I don't know.
The one other thing that I think of, and I the more I think about this, and I've thought about this now for several years, and I think I may have even brought this up to you, like albums used to be mastered for a CD. That was their primary thing. So the person who was doing the mastering was like, we need to make this sound as good as possible on a CD, which a CD, for those of you who don't know, completely 100% accurately plays back the exact same way every time, exactly how it's burned. There's no frequency that a CD could not play. If it's in there, it's in there.
Right.
Nowadays, things are mastered for vinyl.
Why?
Because
there's a reason that vinyl stopped being the number one way to consume music 45 years ago.
Ease of use is the number one thing for sure, but also the fact that it just didn't sound as good. We know that. Nobody watching this video thinks that. The amount of YouTube videos that I have seen of people being like, CDs sound better is a lie. Vinyl sound. I've argued with people on Facebook. Okay. Let's not get into it.
This is an argument that has set me on fire for 15 years. And I don't have to have it anymore because I don't have anybody in my life or near me that thinks such nonsense.
Yeah.
And I don't like to learn that this argument is still being had.
Yeah. Well, the thing is though, like, if you're I understand the appeal of buying vinyl. Like, I understand it. I have it on my wall.
Yes.
It's really cool. That's
you
great.
get a free poster by virtue of the size of the medium. Like, that is genuinely fantastic.
Exactly. It's awesome. Then the idea that, okay, that's fine. If you're going to put your album on vinyl, I do agree it should be mastered for vinyl. What does that mean? Well, vinyl's not that good with super low frequencies, with subsonic frequencies. So you got to scoop some of those out. It's also not good with mid-range frequencies. So you got to scoop some of those out. It's not that good with high frequencies. What are you left with? Nothing. There's no frequencies. No.
There's no music. All vinyls are silent.
Seriously, though, like, you do have to do, or at least it's a good idea to have a separate master for vinyl.
Yeah,
what bands
definitely
have been doing the last 10 years or whatever since the vinyl resurgence started is you get your album mastered several times. You get it mastered for vinyl. You get it mastered for the CD, which should be the true master because that's the one that most accurately represents the way it was created.
That's the lossless one. There's no limitations to using CD.
Correct. But and even more recently, Chris, I know that there are people who literally master their stuff for MP3. So like they master it for the CD and then they convert it to like 192 kilobits MP3. They listen to it and then they think, okay, there's a little bit of this missing, a little bit of this missing. This got compressed here, whatever.
That's great.
They go back and they master it. Again, yes, all perfect. You should be listening to the highest quality music you can on any medium you're listening to. My question is, what if people have stopped doing that and they just get their album mastered once for vinyl and then that is the master that they put out on CDs and on...
But why would you master it for the least consumed style of music? Like,
but the thing is, I don't know. Yes, people definitely listen to music more for free on like Spotify and stuff. However, I think that more vinyl is sold now than CDs, and I don't know if I would doubt that vinyl is sold more than people buy digital copies of albums.
No way.
But the thing is, I don't know if people buy digital copies of albums anymore, do they?
Right. Streaming has changed a lot.
Right.
And that's such an interesting point because CDs are so sterile in terms of like the things that people like about the aesthetics of music. Like CDs, you put it in a thing, but vinyl is like, ooh, it's glowing and it's got tubes and it's like everything's made of wood. What a great vibe. There's so much vibe in vinyl.
And I can't deny that. That is a cool aspect of it.
I have never had a problem with that. It's when people start talking about the fact that vinyl sounds better, which is a word that indicates objectivity. And we all understand the can of worms that is objectivity within the scope of music, but the one place that you can use it is quality. And you can't talk about how vinyl sounds better than anything else. You can say that you like it more, and it is perfectly acceptable to say that, but you have to understand the difference.
The numbers don't lie. And so... Okay, so I'm going to end our part of the video here. Thank you for joining me on this, Chris. I don't know how this is going to fit into the video, but I already recorded that video, the outro for that video, everything already. So thank you very much. I understand when you're trying to make something sound lo-fi, but that was pushed too far. It sounds terrible. I understand that you might enjoy the sound of taking an old vinyl record and putting it on your player that you have that's from the 60s, and it's this big table thing, and you put it on and you listen to it and it sounds great, and there's no treble. The treble knob, you can turn it all the way up and there's really nothing in it because that album was just, it's frustrating. This is exactly what happened with the Black Keys album Dropout Boogie. Exactly. That album has about the same frequency range as this. I wonder if even the same person did the mastering or whatever. But both albums are unacceptable, and I do not feel the need to talk about this any longer than I have to. So I'm going to just end the video here. It is atrocious. It is unacceptable. It is upsetting to me. And if there's some other version of this album, some other master, some other mix of this album that they had for like a vinyl pressing, a lot of bands get their albums mastered for vinyl and for digital, and maybe even some are crazy and they do it for like MP3s too. So they know, like, if that's out there and there's a better sounding version of this album, then poo-poo on the band for deciding to have this be probably what will definitely be the most the most widespread version of this album. It sounds bad. Objectively, it sounds bad. I just showed you examples. Hopefully all of that can make it into there. But it sounds objectively bad. And the reason this hurts me so bad is because I loved every song. I loved what I was hearing. I loved everything. I even liked the mix. It's just the mix in terms of one instrument being louder than the other, the balancing of the mix. The stereo spectrum was really nice. I do feel like some of the background vocals were a little bit loud, but that's fine. The album was dynamic. It's just you couldn't tell because there was no definition in anything because there was no high frequencies. Straight up. Unacceptably, objectively bad. It's not up to the standard of modern music. So, I don't know. I hate when this happens. But I'm going to release this this reaction anyway because very frustrating. Tell me how stupid I am in the comments. Feel free. Tell me how I don't know what I'm talking about, and I have probably bad equipment that I'm listening on, and then I'm using MP3s off of. No, none of that matters because there's a degree to which something is acceptable and something is not. And this is definitely below the line of acceptability. This is objectively bad. It is a fail. This is a fail. And it hurts so much worse. If I didn't like the songs or I thought the performances were bad, it wouldn't hurt as bad because I would be disappointed in it for other reasons. But when an album is bad solely because there was a mixing decision that was made or a mastering decision that was made, it is the ultimate fail because what you did was somewhere along the line, someone made a decision that screwed up the enjoyment of the entire project. It's awful. This reminds me of Diablo Swing Orchestra as well. Go watch my video on my channel for that. Unacceptable. I will never listen to that album again. Same thing with Dropout Boogie because those albums are unacceptably bad. Objectively bad. All right, let's move past this. Later on today, I'm going to be reacting to Lights, which I know will sound good. I'm going to probably be reacting to Metallica from 1984 that was ripped from a vinyl or definitely recorded onto tape, and I know will sound better than this, at least in terms of frequency response. Then next week we have VNV Nation that I know will sound better than this. Then we have Death Stars. Also, oh, and I should have said I wasted my time doing this today when I could have been reacting to the new 69 Eyes album or a really awesome new metal band that I feel has a lot of potential. It's their second album called As Everything Unfolds. I think they're from somewhere in Europe. I heard a little bit of one of their songs like half a year ago, and I was like, wow, this sounds interesting. And I've been following them since then, waiting for them to release their album because I thought their album sounded that song that I heard sounded a little cool. Had some interesting elements to it. Huge upgrade from their first album, which I listened to samples to. Do that instead. Forget this album. Go listen to As Everything Unfolds. They're a little band that no one really knows about, or at least not to the extent of the band like The Heavy. Go listen to that. Go listen to the new 69 Eyes album. I'm sure it was mixed better than this. It hurts me so bad when this happens. It's unacceptable. I don't understand how a professional band could think that this is the way that their album should sound. And I understand that sometimes the band doesn't have control over everything. I understand if you're the mastering engineer and someone sent you a mix with no high frequencies, you can't add frequencies in there that aren't there. You can't boost frequencies that don't exist. So I'm not necessarily saying it's the mastering engineer's fault. I don't even know about the mixing engineer. I don't know if this is all recorded, if the people who recorded, there's no way. The fact that there's one song on this album that sounds acceptable throughout the entirety of the song tells me that it's not a mastering thing, that it's a mixing thing. And that tells me that it's more of a decision of the band rather than any one individual person that screwed this up. So it's unacceptable, whatever. Keep an eye out for other good albums, hopefully, that I do reactions to on my channel here. Join me for any of those. We've got more Metallica coming up. Like I said, VNV Nation, Death Star is going to be coming up pretty soon. We have the new Enig Solmar, I believe. I don't know how to pronounce his name, the guy from Leprous. I'll see you next time.